Alright, hello everyone, Nerd Squared here. This is going to be a post-commentary over a speedrun that I got recently in Pokémon Shining Pearl. That's with the No Out of Bounds category, which is a category extension, and it's not on the main boards, because I had my fun with 90% for a while. I grinded it and got a pretty good time, and I decided to move on to some of the longer glitch categories, and No Out of Bounds is the first one I decided to tackle. So a couple things to explain about this run, the version and what the category is about. So I did this run on version 1.1.1 because the trick that we use to do a lot of the glitches in this game are only possible on this version of the game. It got patched out in later patches. So we had to play on version 1.1.1 for these glitches to work. The other thing is the category, which is going to be No Out of Bounds. Any percent does a lot of fancy movement in the void to skip to later parts of the game, thereby skipping huge chunks of the story that you would normally have to go through. But for No Out of Bounds, we disallow doing those sorts of void walks. We basically define inbounds areas in this game as areas that have the terrain loaded. You can have actors unloaded, but it still counts as inbounds. As long as we're not going outside the normal boundaries of the map, it counts as inbounds, essentially. So the main glitch that I'm going to do in this run is something called menu storage. And it has to do with a quirk on this in this game. I think it's specific to this patch and maybe a couple others after this one, or even before this one. Where if you do two quick inputs of the confirm button really quickly right after each other in the Pokemon summary screen within the menu, you can duplicate the menu, and if you back out of that menu, you can then have a menu up while you still have control of your character here on the overworld. Because what happens when you back out of a menu is the game thinks, oh, you're back in a gameplay state, let's give you control again. But I still have a menu up while that's happening, so it's a very powerful trick because we can use that overlaid menu, or even several overlaid menus, as we'll definitely see a lot of throughout this run, in order to break out certain events in the game, like dialogue with NPCs, cutscenes, and certain animations, like going through a door, as we'll see shortly. And that's really the bread and butter of how we're able to break this game so bad. So we can use the menu storage trick to store animations and have them play later, which can let us do a lot of crazy stuff. So the starter we're going to pick here is actually going to be Piplup, and the normal 80% run, if we're not doing category extensions, we would pick Turtwig because it has the highest likelihood of being this fight quickly in about 2 or 3 turns. But we picked Piplup here because while this isn't an 80% run and we'll obviously be skipping a lot of content, there are some fights we'll have to do, and in fact we were going to catch a Pokemon pretty early on. And one of those fights is going to be Roark, who's the first gym leader, and Piplup deals with the Roark fight most consistently because we're going to go into the Roark fight at level 6, which is a pretty low level, and Piplup just has the easiest time dealing with that because Piplup is water type, and Roark just so happens to be a rock type gym leader, so it works out pretty well for us. So I'm going to do menu storage pretty soon here. After I get out of this cutscene, these cutscenes at the lake with Barry here, or Clint I believe is what we named our rival, I'm going to start setting up the first instance of menu storage. I'll see you pretty soon here as soon as I get back onto the route. I will go into the menu here, go to the summary. You might have heard those two clicks right there. That indicated that I duplicated the menu and successfully got menu storage. So I backed out of one of those menus, which gave me control again, and now I'm walking around, going into the cutscene while this menu is still up. And I'm going to back out of this menu and do another storage in order to have 2 menus stacked up. Because after I have this talk with Mom, where we get the running shoes, I want to cancel out the animation of entering the door to our mom's house by backing out of this menu. see that right here. I'll go out of the house, go back in, and then I just backed out of the menu there, which gave me control in the middle of the animation. And what's special about backing out of the door animation in particular is when you enter a door like this, the game freezes the world, so no actors, or basically characters, are active. So there's Dawn, and there's Dawn's clone, and also trainers are blind as a bat, so they can't see you at all, and you also don't get encounters. So we can completely avoid getting the Pokedex, completely avoid doing the catching tutorial, because we don't need that, I'm pretty sure we're fine. And then we can just go straight to Jubilife. One other thing I did mention that I meant to mention during the intro is in the settings, I turned the music off. That is because by turning the music off, you skip jingles in the game that would normally play when you pick up items, when you level up, and when you get a gym badge. And for no out of bounds in particular, that actually saves a fair bit. It saves roughly a minute or so, because there's a bit of leveling up that we do, at least in the early parts of the run where we actually fight things. And there are quite a few items we're going to be picking up, including a couple of gym badges. So by having the music off, it skips all that fanfare. For like a marathon run of this or something like that, I would have the music on, but since I'm going for a PB here, I'm obviously going to have it turned off. So, as I said, we're going to grab a few items. I'm grabbing those few items to give me some extra tools to work with for some menu storage setups later. This is the first one I'm going to grab, which is an old rod. When you use the old rod when you're not next to water, there's a piece of text that pops up where Rowan, and I believe Rowark later, says, "Hey, you can't use that here." And we can use that text and then cancel out of the menu in the middle of the text popping up to get that frozen state like we did with door storage, except we can basically do it at will and not have to use a door to do it. So I'm going to stack a few menus here. There's a lot of menu stacking setups like this that you'll see throughout the run, so it's going to be hard to explain each individual one in depth, but what I'm effectively doing with this one is doing what I just explained, where I basically freeze the world with the key item that I stored up there. That will give me no encounters until I use the second key item, which unfreezes the world. I ran in the grass there because I want to catch a Pokemon here on this route. It doesn't matter which one I get, as long as it's not a Kricketot. I can take an Abra as well if I get one, but going for an Abra is kind of risky because as soon as it gets a turn, it just teleports away, because that's the only thing it knows. So in this case I got a Shinx, so I'm going to go ahead and catch this Shinx. And we catch it, which is why I bought those Pokeballs in the mart earlier, because it's a little faster than just killing this, than killing the wild Pokemon that you find. Because killing most wild Pokemon on this route, with most starter stats, takes around 4 to 5 turns, which is a little slower than just catching it straight away. Alright, so I'm going to go in this cave and then do the same menu storage thing I did before to avoid encounters in this cave. But I'm going to stack a couple of extra key item menus because there's one extra one I want to use to interrupt some kids' dialogue when I enter Oreburgh City. Had a bit of a mess up my movement here, so I had to very slowly adjust. When you're moving like this and you have the key item menu up with no other menus below it or above it, if you adjust the control stick while you're moving too harshly, you will activate the key item, which is kind of bad if you activate it earlier than you intend to. So for bits of movement like that, you have to be kind of careful so as to not activate the key item. I got an X defense there because, as I mentioned before, we're going to be going into Rowark at a pretty low level. There's a bit of lag in the recording there. We're going to go into Rowark at a pretty low level, and the X defense just gives us some buffer to work with. So I'm going to do a menu storage setup here to get into Rowark's gym without having to go into the mine to talk to him. So I'm just going to stack one old rod and then do another storage on top of that. I'm going to cancel out of the dialogue and then advance it above the gym. I'm gonna use the key item here to free myself so I can move, and there's the kid just sliding in. So we just use that kid's movement that we stored by breaking out of the cutscene to get into the gym, and now I have to talk to Roark in the mines. Because as you can see there, our rival's blocking the door. So we clip in there with the kid's dialogue in order to get around that. Alright, so now we're going to do the Roark fight. And this is going to be the first instance of a bit of a menuing optimization, which is called double inputting. So the D-pad, as well as both analog sticks on the Switch Pro and Joy-Cons or whatever controller you use, all of those can input cursor movements on the menu. So you can do a thing where if you say you want to go 2 spaces to the right, you can do right on the D-pad and then right on the stick. And you can just go right that amount of times very quickly. Saves a little bit of time over the course of the run. And the other reason I brought a Pokemon earlier is if you have a second Pokemon going into this fight, you can bait the Geodude, and I believe the Onix too, into using Stealth Rock. That way you can avoid getting hurt in this fight, so you can save health for later. Because this next Pokemon that I'm about to fight, the Cornidos, is a giant pain in the butt. Because he has one move that he really likes to use here, and that is Headbutt. And the really bad thing about Headbutt is that it has a chance to flinch you. So, of course, given odds in a Pokemon speedrun, it's going to happen a lot. In this run, I think it wasn't too bad, but I had a bit of bad luck with the amount of times that he used it. I think he used it twice. Yeah, there's the first flinch, and I think there was one more flinch after this. The other reason that Headbutt is kind of scary is, again, since we're pretty low level, he's about 4 levels higher than us right now, he hits pretty hard, even after an X defense, which I believe in this game does 2 stages. There might be 1 stage, but I'm pretty sure it's 2. Even after an X defense, he hits pretty hard, so after what we tend to do is we use a water gun, but he goes before us with Headbutt, and then we have to heal to make sure that we can take more hits from him after we do that initial water gun. That one wasn't too bad, but you can get stuck in a loop of, oh, he flinched you, so you didn't get a chance to go, so you just get stuck in a heal loop. That went pretty okay. It can be a lot faster than that, actually. The fastest Roark split I've ever seen is around 12:05 in the world record run of this on the leaderboards. And I got pretty close to sub 12. So that wasn't the best fight, but that's still pretty decent. Right, so our next goal now is to get to Rival 2, because our next goal is to defeat Fantina. Because we fought Roark there because the other tool that we need to use for our menu storage steps throughout the run is ball capsules. And you only get that after beating Roark. Well, you get stickers from beating Roark, which is important for the ball capsule setup later, but there's basically this long shopping list of things we have to get for a lot of the tricks in this run to line up. And Roark is the first part because he gives us stickers, which we're going to use in the ball capsule later. The ball capsule we'll get from talking to Fantina and her mom in the contest hall later in Hearthome City. So here I'm going to set up for a pretty interesting glitch. It's called Legitate. Basically with this long stack of menus I'm setting up here, I'm going to use a key item and then immediately interrupt that as I go over a ledge. And that'll make it so that I'm stuck in the middle of the air and I can walk around with or being that high in the air. And the interesting thing about this is that my z-axis or height doesn't change. So you can see as I go off that part of the route there, I'm still pretty high in the air. Because I want to go below the route a bit to avoid some drainers. Her Z-axis, or height, just changed there by triggering this cutscene before the galactic double fight here. But we can change that pretty quick in the next route. This fight's pretty straightforward, because all we have to do here is just spam water gun on the Zubat. Because what the Chimchar likes to do here is use Wurmple, or Ember on the Wurmple immediately, which it just did. So yeah, we just spam water gun on this Zubat until it's dead. There we go. So that's that fight done, and that's the last fight we'll actually be doing sort of the intended way. It's gonna look very not normal from here. Sorry to say. So we just got ball capsules there from Bebe, and we are going to get some more stickers later from the contest hall to be able to set up for some glitches later. So I'm doing a menu stack that you wouldn't normally go for in runs. The world record strat, or like the hardcore strat for this route, would actually be to not do the stack that I'm doing and just YOLO and go through the route. But there's two problems on this route. One, there's grass, so we can get an encounter. But there's also a spinner right there, and if you're unlucky, she can turn right at you and see you. If you get an encounter in the grass, getting an encounter in the grass isn't too big of a deal, but getting caught by the spinner is. Because we don't have a very high level Pokemon at this point, so we would die pretty quick. So this is what ball capsules are used for. If you use them while you're underneath an incline or a platform, if you use a ball capsule, you will get put up to the nearest platform, which in this case is the top of the stairs. So we can use ball capsules throughout the run to gain height while we're going out of bounds. Well, not out of bounds, but while we're going through the floor. Like I said earlier, we don't count it as out of bounds as long as there's actors loaded or characters loaded in the map. So this next part in particular, it might look a little iffy, but it's in bounds, I promise. So another menu stack here. This is just gonna set it up so that I can use a key item here to freeze the world again, and also once I'm done with this sequence, get back up to the floor with the ball capsule, and then use a key item again to unfreeze the world. So here you'd have to do a gauntlet with a couple of grunts, and then you'd have to go through Eterna Forest to get to Eterna City, which is where the next gym leader would be, at least if we were playing normally. But by doing this movement with that storage setup, we can completely avoid having to do that. Navigating in the overworld like this, especially with this trick in particular, it's kind of difficult because obviously you can't see where your character is. It's not only obscured by the menu, but also well below the ground. So you kind of just have to get a feel for where to move in order to not bonk on walls all the time during that. Alright, so I'm in Eterna City, so I'll use a ball capsule there to gain height. And I'll back out of that menu. And I'll use a key item here to unfreeze the world. I'm going in this house because this is where we get the Explorer Kit, which is the next piece of the puzzle for breaking the game with menu storage. Because when you get out of the underground after using the Explorer Kit, there's an animation where you pop above the ground briefly and then go right back down to the floor. But you can interrupt that animation with using a key item. which you're going to use to, in place of levitate, hover above the ground for some tricks later. You can also use the, you can also, in a similar way to unfreezing the world with a key item, you can also do the same thing by going into the Explorer kit, and then in the options selection where it asks you what you want to do, like play alone or cancel, if you hit cancel, that'll also unfreeze the world. So we're going to use that a lot. And here I'm just going into the menu to bind it to the plus menu here. And I'm going to store a key item. I'm going to use this key item to interrupt this text here. That's the person that would normally prevent you from going on Cycling Road if you don't have a bike, but we don't care, so we're going to go on Cycling Road anyway. It's kind of funny, actually, because we'll get to the end of Cycling Road here, and she'll say, hey, you need a bike to get on Cycling Road. But we're already on a bike. Right there. It's because technically we're on a bike. We don't have a bike, but the game automatically puts us on a bike when we get on Cycling Road. That's why that happens. So I'm setting up a menu stack here before going into Mount Coronet. This just avoids some dialogue with our companion character, Dawn in this case, who would normally give us the VS Seeker. Now we'll go into the menu, cancel out the Explorer kit here to unfreeze the world. But we have to refreeze it here as soon as we get into Mount Coronet in order to avoid some dialogue from Cyrus, who is one of the main villains. Now we're going to do it again on the next route, which is Route 208, to again freeze the world to avoid trainers and not get encounters. Doing all these menu stacks basically at every screen transition admittedly is a little cumbersome, but it's definitely necessary to avoid having to fight things, because again, we still have a pretty weak Pokemon. We only have a level 5 Pip, or level 10 Piplup right now, so we can't take these trainers on in the slightest. We have to do these menu stack setups to avoid them. These long menu stacking setups is definitely an experience. Like, I'm used to it because I've run the glitch categories of this game a lot, but the first time we watch it, it's definitely a little out there. Because it becomes a game of, okay, how long can I keep track of where this person is in this long string of menus? I also use the key item there to cancel out of a dialogue with a person whose Pokemon comes across me as I enter the city. The funny thing about it in this case is I canceled it late enough in the dialogue that the exclamation mark above my head is stored. And I believe it stays there the rest of the game until you save and reload, which is kind of funny. So I'm going into the contest stall here to get some more stickers to my mom, and also to progress the story. As by doing this, Rival 2 will spawn, the Rival 2 fight will spawn, at least the trigger for it will spawn at the bottom of the city. Rival 2 is a pretty interesting skip for it, because if you remember, again, I only have a level 10 Piplup right now, so if I try to fight my rival at this point, he would utterly destroy me. So I'm going to do a setup here with some menu stacking. Although I messed up here, I stacked a key item when I wasn't supposed to. You just have to do one storage here, and then back all the way out to where I can see the overworld. Alright, now I'll enter the ball capsule menu, and then go into this menu where you place a sticker. Because I want to hit the preview here in the ball capsule as soon as the fight starts, which is basically when that last dialogue box is cleared. And then cancel out of it. Hey, look at that, we won the fight. So by going into the preview screen as the fight starts and then canceling out of it, when you cancel out of the preview, the game thinks, hey, you won the battle, and the battle just immediately ends. So we're going to use that for the rest of the fights in this run to avoid having to fight anything. Which is good, because our Piplup would not do very well. So we're going to do another menu stack setup here on Route 209. This is probably the longest menu stack setup in the run, or at least the longest set of menu stack setups, because there's 2 in a row we'll be doing here. And that's just because there's a lot of ground we have to cover, because we want to go all the way over to Celestic Town, because there's a grunt we need to defeat there for Fantina to trigger, so we can fight her in a bit, in about 7 minutes from now. Or actually about 5 minutes from now. And I set up the menus like I did because I want to have this main menu up so I can use the Explorer Kit right here. And then as I back out of here and go back to the overworld, in the middle of the animation where I hop out of the ground, here we go. I interrupt that with a key item, so now I'm floating in the air like I was doing with Legitate earlier. This just lets me skip over the Psyducks there that normally guard this route until you get the Secret Potion from Cynthia. And also just encounters and trainers like before. And then I'm going to do another menu stack setup here. This freezes the world again until I get to Celestic Town. And if you thought Fog Route was hard enough to do with fog blocking your vision, it's even harder doing it with a menu up the whole time, obscuring your vision. So learning to do this route in a glitched run of this game is definitely an experience. What helps with navigating through it, though, is depending on the time of day that you have set on your Switch when you boot up the game, the color of the fog changes. And in this case, I was playing in the evening, so I got navy blue fog, which is okay. The worst fog is if you're playing in the middle of the day, you get this yellowish fog, and it's just impossible to see through. Alright, so now that I'm in the town, I'm going to go into the Explorer Kit here. And I'm using the right stick to select play alone there, because you have to be very delicate with your inputs. Because if you accidentally do a D-pad or left stick input, you can activate the key item when you don't mean to. So I'm going to go into the underground, exit, and then interrupt that with a key item. I'm going to go behind this guy. I'm going to go through his dialogue once without selecting yes, just to make it so I'm able to go into this load zone, to go into the cave. So we don't have to fight that guy at all, we can just go right into the cave and then talk to, or look at this mural, which is going to trigger some dialogue with Cynthia's mother, or Cynthia's grandmother. So that way we get some dialogue with Cyrus once we get out of this cave, which then triggers Fantina. And I put Shinx in the PC there because I want a Death Warp on that grunt right there. And if I have a second Pokemon there, it's going to make trying to die to that guy pretty slow. So I just put Shinx in the box here to expedite the process. Dying to this grunt is pretty quick too, because since we're so low level compared to his Beautifly here, he's gonna kill us in one hit no matter what move he uses. Or at least no matter what attacking move he uses, because he also has Stun Spore, which doesn't do much. In this case, it used Gust right away, so it immediately killed us. While we were in Heart Home, I took a center, just so I could Death Warp here as soon as I'm done with the cave. Now we're gonna go fight Fantina. Puzzle here is always the same. You're supposed to, in the casual playthrough, or in the intended way, look at the sign, which basically tells you a math equation, and you have to go to the door that matches the math equation, the answer to the math equation. But the solution never changes, so we just go in the same doors every time. The first one is the door on the right, second one is the door in the middle, third one is the door on the left, and then the fourth door is the one on the right again. It's kind of odd watching these elevator animations, because I remember in the OG Diamond and Pearl, these animations were for the elevator were so slow. We even had a nickname for it at one point, Fantina's Wild Ride. Shouts to Garfield the Lightning for that. Alright, so I'm going to save here just in case I messed the ball capsule setup on Fantina, which is the similar thing as I was doing with Rival 2. Because there is a chance if you miss input during this that you can crash the game. Because if a dialogue is happening at the same time you have a menu up, like the main menu from before, the game can't handle that. I'm not sure why, and just crashes the game. So you have to be very careful about that during some of these menu storage setups, particularly ones that involve fights. Alright, so we just did the ball capsule trick on Fantina there to win her fight. That'll allow us to use Surf, which is going to be very important for a trick later once we get to Victory Road. So we'll just go all the way back down. So our next goal now is going to be to go to Sunny Shore. And there's going to be some pretty involved menu stacking setups there, including a really cool glitch to get all the way from Sunny Shore to Victory Road. We'll get to see that in a bit. Another thing I can explain while we have a bit of downtime here is with some of these menu stacking setups, like the one I'm about to do on Route 209, there's actually a slightly faster setup you can do. At the end of each of these menus, I'm doing main menu, storage, and then going back to the Pokemon selection screen and doing another key item in order to freeze the world. What you can do instead, which is a little faster, is to go all the way back to the last menu that you have stored up, and then on top of the Pokemon selection screen, bring up the plus menu, and then really quickly use the key item and then back out of the menu to freeze the world. And while that is faster, I've had a little bit of trouble with it, so I came up with setup I just described instead, where you do a main or regular or key item and then a regular menu to freeze the world. All the while, we still have the exclamation mark above our head. Like I said, it does not go away until we save and reload the game. It's stuck there on our head for a while. So for this one, we don't have to do anything too crazy for this. We just have to freeze the world so we don't get encounters or get caught by trainers. As I can go all the way through Route 209 and then Route 215 here. Because we want to go to Vilestone City, which is connected to Route 214, which by extension is connected to Route 222. And that path that I'm going on right now is how I'm going to get to Sunny Shore. I had the save menu up there instead of that long main menu, just so I could see where my character is, so I could move through the route more easily. And I went into the Explorer kit and canceled out to get out of the frozen state. Gonna do a similar thing here on Route 214. Alright, so I use a key item there, and it freezes the world. I'm going to go through the entire route now with the menu frozen. or with the world frozen. And you might be thinking, well, you said you're going to get to Sunny Shore City, but how are you going to do that? There's that guy blocking the way. Well, because the world's frozen, he does not see us as we pass him, so we can just go straight to Route 222 and disregard him. So there's a guy that would normally block us, but he's gone. He doesn't care. Alright, so I'm going to go into the menu and then... Oh. Well, actually, what happened here is, I accidentally backed out of the menu when I meant to go into the menu and use Explorer Kit to unfreeze the world. And I was going to use that last key item I had stored to cancel out some dialogue with Flint here as I enter Sunny Shore. But I could just do a quick storage setup there to bring up another key item so I can then cancel out of his dialogue. So we're going to go into the lighthouse here. We'll very briefly meet Volkner, but we're not going to bother with him because we're not going to fight him. Instead, we want to use the binoculars, and the binoculars here in the lighthouse is where the big warp happens. You can even see in my split names I have it as the warp, because this is the craziest trick in the entire run, by far, in my opinion. So I'm going to use menu storage, and I'm going to back all the way out so I can see the overworld, and then I'm going to go back into the bag. And I'll go to a slot in the bag that's empty, just so I don't accidentally use an item. And then, which will use the binoculars while I'm in the menu. And then while I'm in the menu, or in the menu and the binoculars at the same time, I'll back out and then save. By doing that, that will effectively wrong warp us all the way to Victory Road from right there in that lighthouse in Sunny Shore. That happens because when you use the binoculars there, I believe the game changes your location to the entrance to Victory Road, which is where that spot was in the binoculars. But it brings you out of that location change once you get out of the binoculars. But we saved all the while we were in the binoculars. So when we reload here, we're right at the entrance to Victory Road in the middle of the water. But again, we don't want to fight trainers or bother with encounters or anything like that, because we have a very weak Pokemon right now. So instead, we're gonna get on Bibarel, which is why we got Surf earlier. Then I'm going to go in here into Victory Road and set up a menu stack. This will basically make it so that I can disable the encounters by using a key item, and then have a couple of regular menus stored up because I want to use the ball capsules again to not only raise but lower my height, because you can lower your height too with ball capsules. It just depends on what terrain and what tiles you use them on. So I'll use a key item there, then cancel out of it to gain movement again. And here, while I'm on Bibarel, I have to be very, very careful with my stick movements while I move him. Because similar to how if you do certain movement with a key item up, and if you tilt the control stick too much, you use the key item. It's a similar thing here. If you tilt the control stick too much while you're on Bibarel, you will hop off of Bibarel, which is very bad because we want to be on him for this entire stretch of movement. So I just use a ball capsule there. That'll put me a bit lower, so that way I don't get caught on the bridges here in the Victory Road. And I'm going to take a certain movement path here to get to the end. And then once I get to the exit to Victory Road, I'm going to use a ball capsule again to regain my height. It doesn't look like much because we're just like straightforward moving through Victory Road, but it's one of the most tense parts of the run for me, just because you have to be so delicate with your stick movements in order to not get off of Bibarel on accident. In fact, those pauses there, they might have seen me done during the movement. That's just me adjusting my stick direction to go to where I want to. So I use a ball capsule there to get back up to the floor instead of being below the floor. And then I'll get off of Bibarel because I don't need him any longer. Although I am going to use him here, but it's a little weird the way we do it here. So I'm going to bring up a key item here. You would normally need to use Waterfall here, but we have our ways around that. So I'm going to hop onto Bibarel to surf. I messed up the timing, but what I'm trying to do here is use the Explorer Kit that I had stored there from the key item menu in order to interrupt hopping onto Bibarel here. Because by doing that, it gives me movement, and I can go straight through the waterfall and get into the Pokemon League. And the funny thing about it, too, is because we got on Bibarel in that way, Bibarel is stuck beneath our feet, below the map. Alright, so guess what? It's going to be another menu storage. Because, again, very weak Piplup, only level 12 at this point. How are we going to fight our rival here? It's going to be the same ball capsule trick that you saw me do for the second rival fight, as well as Fantina. So I'll go into the ball capsule there, go into the preview, and then quickly back out of it as soon as the fight starts, and that will end the fight immediately. I'll be doing that for the 4 fights after this in the Elite Four as well. You can technically do it for Cynthia as well, but it's very slow. We have a much faster way of skipping Cynthia, as you'll see later. And I'm going to save it for each of these ball capsule skips on these Elite Four members, because similarly to me saving before Fantina, if you do these menus wrong with the ball capsule skips, you can accidentally crash the game. And if I hadn't saved there, I would have been put all the way back to before the rival fight in the Pokemon League, which would lose a fair bit of time, a few minutes or so. And the funny thing too about getting on Bibarel like you did is that the camera is locked to Bibarel's Y position, and Bibarel right now is very far below the map. So right there you can see we were stuck looking at the abyss for a bit. That's because the camera is tied to Bibarel's Y position. And that's why the camera is so close up in this room as well, because Bibarel is a bit below the floor. It's funny actually that this ball capsule skip exists, because we had a similar glitch. Back soon after the game came out, we found a way to use Pokédolls to do a similar thing to what we're doing with ball capsules. But it very quickly got phased out of the route for all the glitch categories, or at least most of them. Which is kind of sad to me, because the Pokédoll skip, as it's called, is just so funny to watch. But the ball capsule skip is faster, so we have to do it. Made a bit of a mistake here. In order to ensure that I get in the preview as the fight starts, I do a thing where once the last text box clears for these fights, I hold down the plus button, which is the menu to go into button to go into the preview screen. And so if you hold it for too long, the preview plays twice in a row. So I wasted a bit of time there by accidentally going into the preview twice. So I'll do the ball capsule skip again here to get past Lucian. Right, there we go. So again, we could technically do a ball capsule skip on Cynthia as well, and it would work. It would skip the fight, but instead, we're going to do this. So I'm going to bring up a key item here. I'll do 2 instances of storage to duplicate 2 layers of menus instead of just the normal one. And I'll bring up another key item once I get to the Pokemon selection screen there. So I'm going to use a key item here as soon as the game fades out from black. That gives me control and interrupts the cutscene with Cynthia. And then I'll sneak behind Cynthia to get on the elevator behind her, so we skip her fight. And then I'm going to use this key item that I had stored here with the old rod in order to break out of some dialogue that you would have with Cynthia and Rowan leading into the Hall of Fame. And there's Bibarel right there, still below our feet. Like I said before, Bibarel is tied to our feet there, and that's no exception for the Hall of Fame. He's just stuck there forever. Fate worse than death, I'd say. Just forever stuck below our feet. So times for this run is when the game fades to black after this Hall of Fame sequence. It's the first black frame after this sequence. 45 is a very good time. I was only expecting with this run to get something like a 47 or 48 maybe. And then I guess it was just really clean execution in the end portion after Fantina that really brought it home. This is incredibly close to what the third place run currently is right now at a 45.53. So I'm very happy with how this run turned out. I actually want to give some quick shout-outs to Aspect, who's the person in third place of the category right now. They also run quite a few of these glitch category extensions, which I definitely want to take a look at in the future. I also want to give a shout out to Corvame, who is the person that discovered the music off tech that I explained at the beginning. I also want to shout out Shenanigans, Pulse Effects, Worcester, SMA, Concerned Mom, all those people, and probably many more that I'm forgetting. Because they're some of the main people that really routed these glitches out, and the any percent category in particular, back when this game was new and made it as broken as it is today. Yeah, that's my commentary on this run. Pretty happy with it. As I said, I may move on to some of the other category extensions, or the glitch category extensions anyway. But for right now, I think I want to move on to some other speed games. We'll see down the line if I want to improve this or not, or move on to some other category extensions. Yeah, thank you guys for watching.